In today's Threading Thoughts, we talk about the challenges to coffee making and breweries. Coffee makers are challenged with driving innovations to blend tradition with modernity. How can they be relevant to today's generation? In order to update the company's portfolio, it requires calculated risk taking and trying out new products and services without the fear of failure. Digitalization and using omnichannels to drive brand awareness and growth have enabled many homegrown brews to make it worldwide. During the pandemic, various digital aggregators managed to keep businesses running by providing coffee at both supermarkets and homes. However, safeguarding the longevity of existing sales and preparing for new trends is the curve jumper. Venu Srinivasan graduated in commerce from Loyola College, Chennai. After a corporate stint with Citigroup for 4 years, he joined the family concern Leo Coffee. After spending time with the sales, marketing, and finance departments within the company, he took over as CEO in 2011. Leo Coffee is a 100-year-old brand that has been managed by 4 generations and is involved in every bit of the coffee industry value chain, from coffee plantations, processing, distribution, and retailing. He has brought many innovations to the established business. Leo Coffee supports and follows sustainable farming methods and involves the local community for all their farming practices. Hi Venu, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast today, and I'm so glad you were able to spare some time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me here, Mrudula. It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Venu, what has been your curve jumper as far as coffee marketing is concerned?
Curve jumping is, in simple terms, innovation. So, where you disrupt the existing business model that you're in so that you can, go on to the next curve. And the case study that I keep talking about, apart from our own experiences, is the big Netflix and Blockbuster case study, where Blockbuster was a big video rental library in the US in the late 90s. They were a huge company. Basically, you go to their store, rent out a DVD and take it home, watch it, return it. So that was their business model. And they were doing it for 15, 20 years successfully, almost $1 billion company. It was a huge company. So when Netflix launched, I think 2010, early 2011, 12, and they were still, a nascent company, I think they approached Blockbuster asking them for an investment or a buyout, because they were really struggling because internet speeds were low and they were really not successful at that point of time. But then Blockbuster's old board of directors, dismissed the idea, saying that, people like to come to the store and pick up the DVDs and talk to their, people around and socialize. And so nobody wanted to, really watch movies on the internet or online. But they were obviously very wrong. And, it so happened people like to sit at home, click a button, that rather than go to a store. And they failed to innovate. They stuck on to their business model which was very successful. They were having a lot of cash coming in, and they were charging late fee. And if you don't return, you get, it was a very, good business that they had when Netflix approached them, but they declined. And then everyone knows what happened. Netflix grew to a massive scale, and within a couple of years, Blockbuster went bankrupt. So, and now today, from I think 10,000-12,000 stores, they are at 0 now. So it can happen very quickly. If you don't think, where the consumers are moving towards. So for us personally, we've been a traditional brand where we have our own outlets. We have our stores where people come in, buy their coffee freshly ground. We pack it for them, and this has been going on for a very long time, since the 70s. And it's still today a successful model. We still have a lot of customers coming in. It's by no means something that's going out of favor. But obviously, that's we got to be thinking what's next. The next generation of customers are not going to be coming to our stores, sitting there for 20 minutes, half an hour. so obviously we need to innovate. So we at Leo Coffee, we've done a lot of things over the last 7-8 years. We've innovated. There's a concept called Shop in Shop, where we literally take our own outlets operation inside a supermarket. We condense it into a kiosk where you can still get your freshly ground coffee there. But along with your other products, because inside a supermarket you're going to buy your weekly or monthly groceries.
So your footfalls are for the malls or the shops, and they also come for your Shop in Shop, right?
Exactly. So the footfalls are guaranteed, and customers are happy that because they don't have to come for a coffee purchase separately into our stores. So this in 2011 we tried in one store in Adyar. There's a store called Vanga Supermarket. So we tried it then, and it was not really well received. They said, who's going to come and grind coffee in a supermarket? But it turned out to be a very successful model. Today we have around 300 of those outlets, doing extremely well. We add stores every month. So that's one way we've innovated within Leo. Then we've also gone into coffee vending. We've got our distribution arm where we sell packed coffee to all supermarkets, which we were not doing. Traditionally we were only the store concept. And we've also of late gone into e-commerce. We're there on all the e-commerce marketplaces. We have our own website where we ship pan-India. We have a WhatsApp bot where you can order through a WhatsApp ordering system. You can order through our Facebook page. So we've created these multiple channels through which you can still get our coffee other than our stores. And even within the store, there is scope for innovation. See, it can kind of be an omni-channel experience for the customer, and where we also link our stores with hyper-local chains like Swiggy, aggregators like Swiggy, Zomato, and Dunzo. So you can sit at home, place an order, and the same coffee from our stores will also get delivered to you. So, we have these multiple models that we've created, both online and offline. And we have subscription models for the customers where they can book the coffee for a year and we send it to them every month and they get a discount for it. So these are the small things we keep doing apart from our traditional businesses. Though our traditional business contributes the highest in terms of revenue today. So we're not, kind of saying, okay, this is working, let's just... So, it's about the next curve. You keep looking out for the next curve, what it is, even if it's going to be big only after 2 years, 5 years, or maybe even 10 years.
Right. And your point is very well taken. Basically because Blockbuster was so comfortable with what they were doing. It was doing well. They were
exactly.
So they just didn't want to, upset the boat and just continue with what it was. But it was also thinking ahead, right? Sometimes the most unexpected is normal. And we have seen that quite a bit, at least this year. So I think that vision did not happen when it should have.
Exactly. No, even like personally for us, I think we were a little late with the e-commerce thing. We'd started initially in 2015-16, but we little too early, we kind of didn't focus on it. And when the lockdown happened, we were not fully, digital, which if we were, we could have capitalized on a lot more sales. Then we really started pushing for digital after the lockdown happened.
Right.
And today we pretty much there on all online platforms, and like I said, even on WhatsApp bots and all, which is a little ahead of time. WhatsApp e-commerce is still nascent, but we're there. We're getting a few orders a day. So I think you got to be prepared for these kind of situations. COVID was supposed to happen 5 years down the line, but it's happened within a year.
Exactly. So it sort of pushed you to be, take the plunge.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, my next question, you almost answered most of it, but my next question was leading from that, saying that, has the medium in which coffee that is consumed, has it changed? Though the product has remained the same, the medium has changed, right? The way we consume it. And as you said, a WhatsApp bot is something that is not normal. I mean, it's way ahead again. So
yes, it is.
Some of the really major changes that you have seen as a medium, which you mentioned a few, but perhaps you could elaborate on one or two, like even Facebook ads. Is it something that, virtually it pops up as a person, or is it just more like ads that go?
The medium obviously is in the process of shifting even for coffee, but it's a gradual shift. See, we've still got a very traditional customer base who still like to come to our stores. buy their coffee like they've been doing for the last 20-30 years. So that's a stable customer base, which I think will continue as it is. But I think the next generation, the people who in their 30s, 40s, even 50s, and even younger, these people are the ones who primarily go to supermarkets, modern trade outlets. That shift has happened quite some time ago, where it's where you go to one place and you buy everything you want for the week or month. So we got to be there as a coffee brand in terms of a packed coffee product. So you are on the shelf, along with the other brands, and that's where you get direct reach in terms of supermarket. And but the problem is there is a set of customers who, though would like to shop in a supermarket and modern trade and finish all their purchases, would still want freshly ground coffee, because there you primarily get a packed coffee. So that's where we fill that gap by installing these kiosks inside supermarkets. So that's really been a game changer for us, where customers are very happy to go to a supermarket, buy all their stuff, yet get freshly ground filter coffee. So and today, pan India, all over, especially in the north, there's a huge growth in terms of coffee consumption, and that's primarily driven through e-commerce. And you've got a number of recent brand entrants in the e-commerce space. These are primarily the the premium category. There are a couple of brands like Blue Tokai. They're based out of Delhi, so they're doing extremely well with e-commerce. So in terms of e-commerce, I think we're not as strong as some of the new entrants. I think we have to innovate a little more, reach a wider base. So definitely going forward, people will the shift will be more towards online, digital, where people are ordering. So though online contributes a small percentage of our revenue, I think in another 5 years it should be contributing much, much more.
So you're leveraging technology, right? I mean, to try and increase.
Yes,
completely
like
change.
I told you,
Yeah.
Like I told you, within the store itself, we've got these hyper-local aggregators that are tied up. So so even if you want to make a purchase in my store, let's say in Adyar, you don't really go to the Adyar store, but you Dunzo it. Or you place an order on Swiggy. So that kind of changes are happening. So people are caught up for time. They don't want to come and spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes just to buy half a kg of coffee. They still want that, but they want it quicker. So I think that's where the challenge is. Yeah.
And you've been sort of managed to be part of the entire value chain, from the production of the beans, right, till
Yes.
you reach them. So what are your thoughts on that? What have been your challenges? What have been the advantages of being part of the entire life cycle?
Being part of the entire value chain, it's been a head start for me personally, because my family has been involved in the plantation business for the last 4 generations. So we've always had coffee estates. We've had processing units where the raw coffee is processed. And then obviously the retail was started by my grandfather in Chennai in 71. So that was the Leo brand's birth. So already we were part of, plantations, processing, roasting, and retailing. The only part of the value chain we weren't present is selling the actual liquid coffee itself, the drinkable coffee, which we recently, around 2011 or 12, we got into the coffee vending business, where we directly install vending machines and to corporates and retail places as well. So vending has been a new addition to the value chain. So apart from that, we were already there in pretty much the entire space, right from farming to retailing.
Just about to ask, so what have you seen changed, given how it started and how it's moved on? What has been the biggest challenges or changes that you've seen, especially in your generation, once you've taken it on?
The changes in the value chain, if you look at the raw coffee plantation business, in the mid 90s, coffee was liberalized. So before that, there was a pooling system where there was a coffee board. Coffee board still there, but they play a more of a promotional kind of role. Those days they pretty much controlled the entire thing, where all the coffees had to be pulled to the coffee board and then they'll in turn sell it to retailers. But then in the mid 90s, Manmohan Singh liberalized it. So, I was still pretty young back then. But then those were the major. So that really kind of opened up the free market, and, a lot of, and that coincided with the Cafe Coffee Day launch. And, and then later on other chains coming in. So, coffee was kind of made little glamorous and a fashionable drink. So I've seen that change. I think that's for the better, where the industry has kind of gained from that whole liberalization. So that's the major shift that happened in the 90s and 2000. In terms of processing, it's by and large remained the same, because coffee processing is a very delicate process. It's a traditional process. So though with the roasting technology and all, it's been now aided by your recent developments in technology, in terms of you control it with an app, and there are more control systems in place. But by and large, the production of the coffee has remained same. And as we spoke before, the marketing and the way in which coffee reaches the customer's hand is also evolving, with e-commerce and all that. Yeah.
And speaking specifically for this year, this has been a very difficult year for most. You plan to be in every kitchen. And I read it somewhere when you had written it as well, that you want to be in every kitchen. But what have been the biggest challenges in learning from this particular pandemic and any black swan event? It's not just this, because not only does your supply chain get affected, but also the safety concerns from many customers, right? To come in and buy it from your store, or even anything for that matter. If they order it online, the delivery gets affected. So what has been some learnings from this particular year or this particular challenge that we face this year? And any black swan event will create this, any complete disruption. So what are your thoughts on this, and what do you feel that you can do better? So I'm just thinking, in this particular pandemic or in this particular black swan event, you wanted to be in every single kitchen, right? That was something you were yeah. So what has this black swan or pandemic event taught you? Because this would have disrupted multiple layers of your business, right from supply chain to transportation to the fear of customers to come in and buy coffee in person. Even if they were ordering, who's going to supply them during lockdowns? So what was it that you took away from this that you can do better next time something like this hits? It's very rare for something at this level, but the same way.
Yeah, when I talk about being in every kitchen, I kind of focus on being retail oriented. See, we've never been a very institutional brand, because we are perceived to be a very premium brand, more to do with home consumption. I mean, we consciously try to expand our HoReCa business, but I think we're more focused on the end customer and people who consume coffee at home. So, that's been our primary focus, where, we want to be in every kitchen of the consumer, apart from our HoReCa division, obviously. So, to get it to the, in this pandemic time, obviously it's been difficult, because, the first initial days, nobody really wanted to come to our stores for the safety reasons that you mentioned. So, though our stores were open, but the good thing was we'd already tied up with Swiggy, Zomato and Dunzo, and we saw a huge spike in sale with them, because people were sitting at home, and immediately the government had allowed these aggregators to function. So there was a huge spike. And we kind of enrolled with them only around 10 days ago. So if we were late by a few more days, we would have been missing out on huge orders. So it was an eye opener. So, but as the days progressed, people, they had these curfews, and then there are these timings within which the purchases have to be made. So people were coming to the stores, and we were not majorly affected in Chennai. But then the other parts of Tamil Nadu, where we had distribution and we had to send out our vehicles, all that, was a big challenge. But again, e-commerce kind of solved that problem, because people sitting anywhere in India could order coffee, and courier services by and large were functioning. So there were a lot of lessons to be learned. And I think going forward also, these challenges, some of them will persist. And it's been an eye-opener for us as to how not to rely only on, a particular channel such as walk-ins or, retail distribution. These have been very traditional ways of doing business where you do FMCG distribution and you have your own retail outlet. So I think we got to, it's taught us to think beyond all those things. I think there's a lot of disruption in terms of distribution as well. The traditional system for any manufacturing company was you manufacture and then it goes to a warehouse and then it goes to a super stockist and then from that goes to a stockist and then a retailer and then a customer. So they're like pretty much 5 to 6 kind of intermediaries before it reaches the end customer. I think that's being broken of late, and the value chain is getting disrupted, I think for the better. I think, see, at the end of the day, the two people who really matter and will stay on are the manufacturer and the end consumer. It is the gap between these two, that needs to be bridged, and I think it's happening for the better, definitely.
No, that's very heartening to hear, because as you said, this has been a real eye-opener, and you were so lucky that you managed to tie up just a few days before, because after that,
yes,
absolute chaos, I think, just to even get to talk to people and do it. So better late than never, I think. And that was
absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely, right? And so you plan to bring new age sort of business thinking to old legacies. It's a very old legacy. You try to bring new age business thinking, and where do you see the future?
Yeah, see, we've got a massive legacy, obviously, because it's almost 100-year-old legacy, and that sometimes becomes not a hassle, but it comes in the way of innovation, because you're carrying this whole legacy of tradition and some things which have been done for many years. So coming and trying to disrupt that becomes a huge challenge. And 10 years ago, I was very impatient. I wanted to do a lot of things very quickly, but then that doesn't work in a family setup like us. We got to take everybody's opinion. Sometimes we could be wrong as well. So so I've learned to be a little more patient in terms of managing this whole legacy. But legacy is good. You've got this huge history to talk about, and that can be something that the customer also trusts about you. But then on the flip side, it's not going to help much in today's world. If what happened 10 years ago, 50 years ago, is not going to be relevant today.
It's
it's a fine balance where you.
It's such a level playing field now.
Exactly. See, talking about the level playing field today, see, it doesn't matter if you're a 50 or 100-year-old brand. Blue Tokai is a company based out of Delhi. And in the online e-commerce space, they're pretty much number one. We're not. So I was telling you that, it's a level playing field. You obviously can leverage on your history and your legacy, and that could be advantages for you, but on the contrary, you got to keep innovating. Otherwise, just history and legacy is not going to help you much.
No, not at all. It becomes quite a challenge. You need to keep reinventing to make sure that you are you mean something in this world, because it doesn't matter anymore, right?
But at the same time, you also study history. You look back of at what all things that's been done. That's important too. So it's a combination. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So very interesting time. But thank you so much for taking time off and joining us today. It has been really interesting and a very informative talk as well. And we can only wish you the best going forward. But thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Amrudula. It was a pleasure. Thank you.